Hello, Anastasia here from the Sacred Spheres. I'm coming to you today to discuss the sphere of sacred play. That is the sphere in which we are responding to what is coming into our field of awareness through the waking life, through images that grip us and call our attention to them, through the sleeping life, through the dreamscape, in other words, and images that arise in that landscape, and how we are responding to its their calls, as the neighbors come home and kids start yelling, as we respond to that call in a way that is matching its playfulness, but not necessarily matching it at exactly the level at which it is, because sometimes there are grim, dark, deep, inner psychic landscapes that are nightmarish and terrifying, and there is definitely a need to unpack that a little bit first to tend that, but sometimes we are just compelled to answer to what is presenting itself in the way of an artistic response, because what is presenting itself all around us, whether we're awake or asleep, is a facet of one can say the eternal mind, the one great consciousness that is creativity itself, that creates all things, that engenders life in all things, that soul spark that's present and animated in absolutely everything, whether it's the dreamscape or the waking scape. And it is completely charged with this animated capacity, this ensouled presence, and at times it grips us and it brings us into a space where we wish to answer the dream in the way of the dream language, as it were, the image in the way of another image. And sometimes it's not just an image we doodle, sketch, draw, some type of painting we make. It can also be an artistic response, a creative response that is, the body moving, dance. It can be photography. It can be music playing, singing. There are infinite ways by which we can express that creativity in ways that aren't even per se, the arts, right? It can be the art of conversation, the art of being present and holding space for someone else, listening to when your neighbors come home and the kids are screaming, and you just get curious, right? The curiosity, the art of curiosity, the art of listening. So with that said, I wanted to discuss, first of all, the reason I came to sacred play, but more importantly to art in the first place, in the sense of acrylic paintings. So a little bit about me. I was once completely crippled by perfectionism at a level that was beyond pathological. There needed to be multiple medications at one point, psychiatric meds involved, hospitalization, inpatient, outpatient. I was studied kind of like a guinea pig for a program through UCLA, which was, you had to sign waivers, pretty experimental in a sense, and also using fairly straightforward cognitive behavioral therapy as well. But it was very extreme. It really pushed me to the extremes because I'd pushed my own psyche to the extremes, because I really aspired to do everything as well and perfectly in life. I come from an immigrant family, and a family where we didn't really have many opportunities for education. I'm the first really who kind of was not just given those opportunities, but kind of took them and went full steam ahead. And so I always tried to do the best I possibly could with everything, including when my body, mind, spirit started to break down. I did that like an A++, 4.8 GPA student. So I broke down like a fucking champ. And I mention that because in this process, my own process of individuation, and then going into the dark night of my soul, which began roughly in my early 20s, which is fairly common for if you do have a history of mental illness, from like from that standpoint of sort of studying of mental health history and so on, and how it affects people, and in that field, in that discipline, that science, that is rather common. If there is something that's going to manifest, that's normally when it happens. Mine coincided with having once been a really intensive athlete, and then no longer having that, just being able to focus on one thing instead of like 15 things at once, because I was not just an athlete, but like a double major. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna get an MD and a PhD, the PhD in English literature, completely irrelevant, so to speak, to medicine, but I wanted to, you know, bridge the humanities and something really rich and artistic with medicine. And I left medicine, went totally into the humanities, and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna add on classics and Latin and Greek and German and French and all these other things to enrich this broad of, you know, sort of more philosophical, epistemological kind of education. And just, yeah, I went completely nuts in that direction, which I was able to dive into because I finally wasn't doing the whole full-time sports, going pro or Olympics, whatever I was going to do path. And yeah, but having worked out almost 6 hours a day most of my life, traveling and playing at the highest level I could, and that was just gone overnight, and eating all sorts of like rich, high fat, high protein foods, going from that to almost like a raw vegan diet, and then like not really sleeping much because of school, and then basically drinking lots of caffeine after never drinking caffeine. And yeah, it was just I set up the stage for a perfect shitstorm. Yeah, but it was also at a moment where I was suddenly allowing myself to start to study and do things that I really found more enriching than what I should do as somebody who's an inheritor of a long-standing ethnic religious community where women had no opportunity and were only, you know, homemakers, and could not be educated even to an extent, but really not even the women, the men as well, in this community I come from. And so I'm discovering the humanities in its capacity and how rich it is. You know, it's obviously not just one facet of human experience. It's literature, it's, you know, drama, it's history, it's philosophy. I mean, it's really, really encompassing. But what I started to learn is that I was less the scholar. I mean, I am scholarly intellectual, but I was more the artist. I was like, oh shit, I really feel called to be the writer who is studied, not the person studying writing. Oh no, what the hell am I going to do with my life now? How am I going to survive? And then that was when everything just started going to shit. And I give you this little history, and I hope to talk more about it. My story, you know, it can be, you know, kind of interesting, special, rather challenging at points, and unique. However, it's also, of course, it's unique. It's my story. There will only be one me, just like there will only be one you. But it's also a fairly common story of people who are, you know, I was born in the U.S. My parents were born here, but, you know, my dad's parents were not. But also, we were born into an ethnic religious community that's endogamous. It's closed. I mean, you marry within the community, like the Hasidic Jews or Mennonites or Quakers to an extent. So yeah, even though I was raised here, I was raised in this closed community. And then of course, okay, we sort of like broke out of that, and now here's this opportunity. So that very much like an immigrant story, even though I was born here. So it's kind of a common story, but also, you know, with my own particular flair and little twist on it, and how I kind of coped and survived some horrors, some really intense death that happened with people very young around me, and some older as well, and my own inner death that I had experienced, and coming close to actual death as well. So I hope to share more about that, because the times I have shared it helped people feel like, you know, they weren't as alone in their own stories that were similar. They could find aspects that could help them and encourage them and give them perspective, not like I have the answer. What worked for me will not work for maybe anyone else. Basically, you know, there might be a little tiny nugget of something. You take what works and you leave the rest. So that is really important to have that out there. I'm also non-medical professional at all. I have certain trainings and certain certificates and certain degrees, but my experience is anecdotal. I have been through a lot, and I have been through a lot in the mental health profession, that area of experience, as though a patient or a client. But that is an interesting perspective too. And I learned a lot from being on meds, weaning off meds, and what happens, with really intense grief, and how do you function in the world? Like, how do you have a job, or how do you get on disability, or just, there are a lot of experiences that I've had, some of which are typical, some atypical, but again, it's my own particular kind of encapsulation of all that through this human form, that sometimes, for those people who are realizing they aren't doing so hot, and their body is calling for a deep rest. That state of depression, the deep rest state where you need to withdraw, and what that looks like, and how do you function, especially when you are high functioning otherwise, like rather intelligent or engaged or social, but also you have these antisocial tendencies, and ways that you really need to slow down. And it's just, it's very hard to navigate all of that. And I would love to talk more about this on this channel. If you're open to that, if anyone's watching this video, send me a message, comment below if you want to hear more of that, less of that. I mean, I'm probably going to talk about it anyway, sorry. But as I talk more about things like this, what you want to hear more of, I have stories upon stories. I've seen a lot of things in my short life, in part because I set out to do that. I also realized quite early on in life that I was an artist. I didn't know what that meant fully. I thought it meant I'd be a high literary writer. So I would kind of set out to experience things that were often actually excruciatingly painful, so that I would have stuff for the book, so to speak. And I think that's a really good jumping off point for this next part of what I'd like to tell you, which is that because of this pathological perfectionism that I had, that a lot of people have, it is very much not uncommon, because we are often equating our worth with what we achieve and what we do. And so if we are learning how to do something, whether it's writing or painting or something, we feel terrified to do anything wrong, because it almost immediately becomes like we're worthless. Why am I even doing this? What's the point? Even when we might be feeling deep catharsis, purgation, some type of shift, transmutation happening in us, and it's very healing and healthy. If it doesn't look a certain way, we just like poo-poo it and say, well, fuck that, let's just throw it away, baby with the bathwater kind of a thing. And I had to really come to terms with that, because I felt deep calling for, especially for writing, and for a lot of things. I've sung, there's singing on this, channel, and the need to just, have the right technology to produce things a certain way, to sound a certain way, to have the stories already, there, and being kind of somebody who was a beginner and also very advanced in ways. The advanced beginner, that's copyrighted by me. Very, very challenging, knowing how to do that, and also financially how to survive, but also it wasn't as much not being able to survive financially because I was just starting out, meaning you're in the I'm in the internship state of my life, and so it's like minimum wage, or I'm working for free, but money comes more from a mindset. If I believe fundamentally that I can't survive while being a beginner, guess what? I'm not going to, because as you think you are. So that's a whole other topic for other videos. But in the state of surrendering to, releasing perfectionism and just doing it. Austin Kleon talks about just showing your work. All the studies that look at quantity versus quality, just do more work and things come out of that, right? Versus just focusing on, I'm going to make high quality work. Interestingly, when you do more quantity, quality does come. And also your heart opens up and softens, and you start to explore, maybe this is a kind of a path where I want to get deeper into the technique of how to do X, Y, Z over here. But it comes from just like really kind of a surrender and letting go and letting things flow. So it's in this state where I was in deep surrender, forced to be because of the quarantine, but also grateful for that, because I was in a hellish state of being, jobs, personal life, everything was just at a crisis point right before quarantine. And then I don't know how I'd worked myself through that, and then bam, quarantine. I'm like, well, that's how that works itself out, because everything just stopped. It's over. And some of those jobs actually don't exist anymore. So so there I was, right? And I discovered, dream tending, and deep imagination. And through that, opening up my own psyche, opening up my own imagination in new ways, I then started hosting a group called Sacred Play. And in hosting this group, I thought I'd be writing poetry or just writing and opening up to that through this lens of depth psychology and working in this deep imaginal realm or realms, right? The realms of psyche. And very quickly someone started to work with me, did like a little workshop saying, be interesting to see what your words and, poetic turns of phrases would look like on a canvas or in a visual format, almost, some type of Basquiat style or whatever. There's so many people who use words on paintings and visual media of any sort, mixed media, etc. And that actually turned out into this Pandora's box opening up, and me being so turned sort of on, like a light switch just went boink. I mean, I could feel like there was like a water pressing on a dam that was already breaking. And then after that workshop, it was just like everything flooded open and I needed to paint everything in sight. I could feel that urge coming for a long time. Julia Cameron talks about this in The Artist's Way, when you are a shadow artist, where you date people, let's say, who are musicians, or you're always around, you're always going to shows, right? And always around people who do music, but you're never doing it yourself. You're like, oh, I could never, I have no talent, I can't do that. But in point of fact, that's actually your yearning and really what you want to do. So you're near it, but you're not actually doing it. I actually did do things in acting. I did do things in singing, and writing to a certain extent as well. I actually have done it professionally in a lot of different ways. But then art, visual arts, I found myself dating artists. I found myself working at galleries at times and involved in artists. Some of my closest friends being extraordinary artists, and never myself even, like a deep, tiny voice, way distant, somewhere like, maybe try buying some paintbrushes. I mean, it was so quiet. But then it started to make sense, because in this dream tending community, we respond to dreams that are shared and tended in community with art often, and sketching, and some of us are definitely very professional and some of us have no experience. It doesn't matter. You just put down something, right? There's no judgment, there's no shame. You just express and respond in whatever way that you feel you want to. Even if you are a pro artist, some people just do stick figures, whatever you want. They go to folk art or something, as it were, in that moment. Whatever you're led to. And I could see some of the artists in our community who just would put all these colors together in abstracted ways, but they felt emotive and powerful and present and speaking to me, speaking a language that I felt like I spoke too, but I didn't know how to do that for some reason. It just made no sense to me. And so when I did that little workshop with someone in my community, and suddenly these floodgates are open, like I finally was given the basic information and tools how to do this, I had to paint everything in sight, and a process started to evolve, and the most radical act of creating came through me that has blown my mind and still blows my mind. I've now been doing this for about 1.5 years. Yeah, it's not really been that long. Since December 2020 is when this art coming through me started, by way of working deep in the psyche and in the underworld, as well as, just being in the waking landscape as well, the above world, so to speak, above ground land. No, that sounds like a new movie coming to you, Above Ground Land, starring Jennifer Lawrence. Anyway, this is going to be a segue then into now that you know a little bit of my background and the sort of almost catatonic, paralyzing level of perfectionism that I had, and what I fought through. It took roughly 15 years, I'd say, to get to a more functional place where that wasn't as debilitating and paralyzing. And a very long time, I'd say about 20 years or so, really, to get to this point where I could just be okay with having a process and just sitting down and just doing work and letting it come out and being like, oh, I like it, I don't care, and the next, do the next thing and do the next. I mean, has been quite a journey. I mean, our lives maybe span 80 to 100 years or so, you know, so that's a good chunk of change of my life. And so now moving into this next segment of the video on my process. So this is, I'd say 100%, 1000% intuitive. Some say channeled. I could say at times it feels very much channeled. And I will explain more about what that is. And of course, if you're trained in dream tending or energy work or some type of deep imagination praxis, then you'll definitely resonate with some of this. But the first thing to know is that this is, and also I should say that this is for anybody. You don't need some type of background in having, you know, attuned psychic gifts, like you're attuned Reiki healer or something. No, take what works, leave the rest. But yeah, first of all, this work that you're doing when you're tapping into the infinite flow creativity that is in all things, that animates all things, the soul spark of all. You could say God, you could say Psyche, you could say the infinite consciousness, you could, whatever you want to call it, just the soul spark. It is a sacred process. And it is like a ritualistic or ceremonial happening or practice. And as such, I feel like it's really important to treat it that way. So Stephen Pressfield in The War of Art, and of course Julia Cameron in The Artist's Way talk at length about this. There are different ways by which you want to enter into this process that is ritualistic, ceremonial. So in dream tending, we light a candle to sort of metaphorically stand in for that soul spark, so to speak, of Psyche, the animated, ensouled property that is present in absolutely everything. The walls that have been painted blue by me and teal, as it were, or whatever this is. Sorry, in my hair, in my body, and not just me, but in, you know, even this little toilet paper roll that's my Kleenex for this moment, since I've been a little sniffly and sick. So candle is lit. You can, you know, Wiccans and people in that tradition, you can call a circle. You can bring in the elements, honor the elements, honor the directions, you know, northeast, southwest, within, without, as above, so below, that sort of thing. You know, there's so many traditions. You can burn some Palo Santo, some sage to kind of clear the space. If none of that sounds nice or good to you, just, you know, find a way to make your space comfortable to you, like just a little, like 5% more comfortable. And that reminds me of somatic work, right? The body, doing something where you just settle a little more into your body. So leave your head, get more into your heart, right? Get out of the mind, get into the body. Breathe. The easy way to do that is just, even if you don't want to do anything that's like calling sacred space, right? You know, drum it, you know, this is a drum. You could drum. I mean, you could sing. There's so many ways. There's so many, the Sufis, you know, they do whirling dervish. I mean, there's so many ways to do this that are grand and also very simple. But the simplest way is just sit down, or if you're standing up, whatever you're about to do, right? Because this doesn't just need to be art, you know, like fine arts, you know, visual arts. It can be, you know, you're about to dance or sing or something. So, you know, just breathe out, close your eyes, you know, breathe in through your nose, out through your mouth. Just start to slow down breath, notice breath, put hands on body. I do have a video, incidentally, on grounding. I did a guided meditation grounding a woman as we prepared to discuss dream and do a little bit of dream tending. So definitely I'll put a link to that in the comments. So definitely you want to do something that resonates with you. And in your mind's eye or even out loud, you can indicate your intentionality, what you're doing. You know, I set the intention. You can say literally I set the intention to create right now and to receive the instructions and whatever I need for assistance to help me do this. Okay, so once you do something like that, I just mentioned something really key. You know, I receive the instructions. So what we're doing is tapping into our higher self, really who we are in truth. So you could say that we are all individuated aspects of eternal consciousness in human form. So we are, right, these souls, right, that get this opportunity as spirit to embody and live in flesh. And how freaking cool is that? How extraordinary is that? And so we're these individuated aspects, like individuated droplets in an eternal ocean, but also we are the ocean itself. So there's the one and the many that is the one as well. So there are both of these sort of dynamics at play. But as such, because we are connected, all of us, and everything is ensouled. So you're sitting there to listen into, again, this higher yourself from a higher place, and call upon also those who might be able to help you. So those are called, your allies or your soul companions, your guides, angels, guardians, archangels. There's so many different traditions of people who ask for those things, those who ask for that type of assistance, I should say, or help, to those types of that type of guidance. So in Stephen Pressfield's book, for him, it's an invocation, and he takes it, if I remember correctly, from the Odyssey, and I can also link that below, or at least just a copy from his book, that invocation to the Muses. For me, sometimes I feel, I don't want to say rushed, but I also don't want to get bogged down in perfectionism, like it has to be a certain way. I want it to be as easy as possible for me, unless I feel really called to do something elaborate, like drum and sing and chant and play the ukulele, so dance around naked or something. Often I'm just settling into my space, because I feel I'm like, it's time, like whether I'm going to be hosting a group in which I'm going to be doing art, or I'm in another group in which I'll be doing art, or it's just me on my own, and I'm getting that feeling, I want to create right now. So normally, what I do is I just, I breathe in and out. Sometimes, like in my sacred play group, because I'm hosting it, so I take a moment as I get everyone started on their journey. I go off camera and I just breathe, and this is, your Anjali mudra, your prayer mudra. I just sort of breathe in, and I just literally, to welcome the Muses, I just welcome them. I say, I welcome the Muses. I welcome my highest level, most sophisticated art guides. And that's another thing. In Sonia Choquette's Ask Your Guides, she talks about that at length. That's a beautiful book. If I can, I'll remember to link that in below as well, because she discusses how to do that if you have zero idea, because you have the power to ask for help from anyone, including people who have existed before, like Salvador Dali. Why not, right? The Lumiere brothers, right? The originators of cinema, the Wright brothers. I don't know, inventors of airplanes. Just Rodgers and Hammerstein. I mean, Jeff Buckley, right? I mean, now this is dangerous terrain, right? Because you're opening up to the spirit world and so on. So I highly recommend you have some type of awareness of that. I'm happy to talk to you more. Email me if you want to discuss that more, because you want to be very sure that you have allies and support to open up into that kind of a realm. But one thing that you can simply do, if you don't want to specifically name someone, though you have every right to do that, and guides are all too happy to want to work with you. But what you can do is simply just say, in your power, because you are in your power, you are in your authority, you can say what you receive and what you don't receive. As you think, therefore you are. As you ask, therefore you receive. So you can say, what I want is someone to help me right now from my highest, most sophisticated self, them from the highest, most sophisticated realm. Whatever words work for you, those are words that come from Sonia Choquette. And also, I think just a little bit my own adaptation of that and interpretation. So you want to be able to find a way to invite in, whether you're literally like you're thinking of certain ancestors, and I'm not going to name my specific ancestors, but like let's say your great grandmother's name is Kathy. I invite in great grandmother Kathy. I invite in grandmother Jane. I invite in, so people who've passed on who are now basically your guides from the other realms that you feel deep connection with, or even an old friend or mentor, or somebody you admired, even people who are currently alive. You can call out to their soul self for guidance and for assistance. So, if I kind of have an idea of I feel like I really want to do something that's more representational, not abstracted, and I want to do almost like an abstracted portraiture, maybe Modigliani will come to mind. But with humility, with respect, I call upon whomever I feel is right. And often, quite truly, it's as simple as I use a decree from Paul Selig. So I say, I am word through source. You can also say, I am love through source. And I welcome my highest level, most sophisticated angels, guides, guardians, archangels, art guides. I like working with interior design guides who help me create composition and colors. For some reason, to me, they help with collage. I do call sometimes specific people. I call a specific, from Modigliani, so on, or I call upon, specific ancestors. And I generally just call on the muses. And when I say muses, I'm speaking of the ancient Greek muses, although muses have been in countless traditions around the world ever since the beginning of human history, at least. And possibly before that, but I don't know if the animals before us have documented that in any way, or they can absolutely communicate that to us through the other realms. There are other modes of communication. That's a whole other video, a whole other conversation. If you want to set up an appointment about that, please, or just email me, please do. How to talk to people from all of time and space, things, ideas, landscapes. Yep. So now that you have called upon, some type of muses, done an invocation, maybe you found there's a poem that just works for you that you say, so it's just simple. You don't have to think too much, or remember anything, or feel like you're doing it wrong. Because again, this is about liberation. It's not about the straitjacketing of what one should do or shouldn't do, the money one should make or shouldn't make, how you should or should not look in the world, how your hair should be, clothes should be, how smart or stupid or pretty or ugly, or all of that bull fucking shit. Pardon all my language. But so now that we've established some type of sacred space, some temenos, a container, right, for our art making to take place, I'm going to speak again in terms of my praxis or my practice for painting. So for me, again, we have this invocation, we have the calling in, we have the setting of the space, making sure I'm in a safe space, I have my allies, I'm prepared as best I can. And sometimes I can literally do this in 30 seconds or less. It does not have to be elaborate, but it can be. And I feel like the more energy you charge into it, potentially the more potent it can be. But it's been potent for me, just like if I've just done a super quick ritual to get ready for the ritual of making some type of art. It can help to have an offering. This might sound silly, but I mean, so many cultures. I live in Thai town here in Los Angeles. It's actually also Little Armenia. It's like 5 different things. But Thai town, which is here, there is this beautiful sculpture, the statue of a deity, a Thai deity, and people have all these offerings, like food offerings, clothing items. There are all these offerings to it, and that is something that you can do in your own way that feels right to you. So I feel like my guides have a sweet tooth. I love little chocolate peanut butter cups, and I often, when I'm about to do something, or even early in the day, I put it out often on my stove where it gets a little mushy, a little warm and yummy, and I offer them a little sweet treat because that feels right to me. And sometimes I don't do that. It's just whatever feels right to you. This is all about curating your own practice. So it's actually, it can be really fun. And if you want to explore this with me more, I'd be more than happy to do a one-on-one session in which I help you understand maybe what your own praxis or practice is for this, and maybe the elaborate version, a medium-sized version, a small version. But so there's an offering given, invocation, a safe space, most important, humility, surrender, again, quieting the mind, the head, going into the body, into the heart, breathing, You can do a guided meditation like the one I have on my channel. There's countless on the internet, on Insight Timer, on YouTube. Pranayama, breath work. There's so many ways that you can get into the body and just try and leave this little noggin behind without disrespecting it. That's another thing. Holding the space. Like, it's okay, brain. It's okay, thoughts. You can be here. It's okay, past stories, pain, complexes, patterns, because that's also a place from which you are. It's like part of the repository of your experiences from which you can cull and bring something to the surface that you're about to paint. So in this space, moving to a little more of the active part of this process, right? So you're just listening at this point. Now, for those still, I guess, attuning into how they listen and what they're hearing, this can be challenging. But I think the people listening to it probably already have some type of art practice. And I could be wrong, but it's now the time where, for me though, I've already had the kind of nudge, like, do something. Like, it's time to, like, let's throw some paint down. I close my eyes, I breathe, and we do this in dream tending too. We just are setting the stage to be directed, to be guided. We are now, what we are is the vessel. And this is where I mentioned channeling earlier. We are the channel. We are the medium through which whatever wants to flow can flow. And we know we're safe because we've created safe space. Again, we need to be very careful for this because there are always little hitchhikers that could maybe show up, or there are definitely feelings that don't feel so great, that are maybe too painful, too traumatic, too much for us to handle. So we want to be, again, tread very carefully in this. Remember that fools rush in where angels fear to tread. Is that Alexander Pope, Shakespeare? I always forget. Remembering that with surrender, breath, softened, right? Muses, the invocation, we recognize this as a sacred ritual, a sacred space. We're in safe space. We're opening up. We're allowing. We're humble. We're kind. We're compassionate. We're listening. We're just sitting here. So in this space, when I'm there, I now just listen. And in listening, normally what happens is I hear very specific colors. And typically it's a very simple palette. And if you're not hearing anything, a way to just get started and to have a surface that you activate, right? That you put something onto and get started, just pick 4 colors. And if that feels overwhelming, just choose 3 colors, or hell, 2 colors. Just a very limited palette of colors. And now this might not work for you, but for me, what works really, really well for me is having everything present that is what I should not have present. So, because we need, obviously, tools, right, to paint with. So we need paintbrushes and normally some type of jar or container to put them in. We need a palette. We need something that goes on the palette, like a wax paper or whatever we have. And we need the paint itself. We need other mediums, other media, whether it's like a matte medium, or, I mean, it goes on and on and on. There's so many, things that are needed. The surface itself, right? So when I started out doing this, for me, so that there was almost no perfectionism that could come into play, an ego and the egoic mind frame and the mind, that it could be as much from heart and soul and what was just flowing through, I would use old, this is painted, I'll show this to you in a bit. I would use old little coasters that came from my last job in the movie theater, where they didn't have many gifts for us at our crew party for the holidays, and they gave us these literally I almost said posters. Yeah, these little cardboard coasters from a not so great movie that kind of bombed and nobody wanted them. And so, sorry, White Boy Rick. I did not see it. I can't tell you if it was good or bad or nothing of the above. None of the above. I would use, yeah, I do have a sketchbook paper. I love flat surfaces like that. I definitely have used canvases, even big, thick, huge 4 feet, even by 4 feet canvases at times. I haven't gone bigger than that. Here's a little pro tip or fun side note, a ding ding. Ring that bell. Okay, I do have a ding ding, ding ding. Pro tip, plastic utensils. Instead of using paintbrushes, at one point I had, I think 0 or maybe 2 tiny ones that a friend gave me. They're like what you would get from like a little kid's coloring book. Like they're like this big. They're so cute. So plastic utensils bloody changed my life. In fact, palette knives are obviously a bit similar to a plastic little knife or a knife, but like a butter knife, for example, steel one or whatever the material. But I've been using plastic cutlery now for so long, well, since I started painting, so for 1.5 years, but constantly, where I feel far more comfortable using a plastic knife, because I know just how it feels. I know if I put this much pressure, what's going to happen. Like I've gotten to intuitively know how to work with it. So really do what just calls to you. And I kind of find it fun to see how uncouth I can be, like how much I can break every freaking rule and let things happen that are still gorgeous or interesting or awful too. I think there's so much to learn and enjoy from when a painting maybe is objectively awful. And I love being surprised. I have never been more surprised than by painting these small throwaway, almost garbage, what people think is garbage, coasters or whatever it is, like plastic. I have plastic, like not Tupperware, like containers, like from, you go to Trader Joe's and like the, whatever, like basil, right? And it's like a plastic container, or like I was recently really sick, and like I have a lot of these tissue boxes, and I just deconstruct them and just bloody hell start painting on it. And guess what? Oh, you're not supposed to do that because that is not archival. Well, you know what? I say screw that. I mean, art has evolved radically since, just the last 5 years, let alone the last 20, 40, 60 plus years. I mean, there are people who do installations with a bloody rotten banana and they make $150,000 or whatever when they sell it. I mean, anything can be art. This is about your own expression. You have to put all that shit at the door. I mean, there are definitely some of you probably want to do more representational art where it really looks like something. It's almost realistic, like a photograph. And that's beautiful. If that's what your soul is crying out for, there are countless YouTube videos on how to do that, and that will train you. Obviously, you can go to art school, but you can do this on your own. There are many ways to do that, but I'm not fully talking about that. What has worked for me, and again, take this or leave this, is what is not right, what you're not supposed to do, and finding complete liberation in that. Like, oh, you're not supposed to mix dark colors, it makes them muddied. I'm gonna mix the fuck out of them. Thank you very much. My palette should be wax paper on like a plastic or whatever thing with my finger hole. And I have an Amazon box that I taped together with some painter's tape, and then I put over it that blue tape that's awful. It never sticks really to anything, but yeah, and then I put tin foil over it. And I finally got some wax paper because that's what you're supposed to use. And I actually found that with my palette, I really don't like the wax paper. I actually love the tin foil, and I think it's a hell of a lot cheaper. I love my freaking, there's something so liberating about that palette. It makes me feel like I don't have to take myself seriously. Anything's allowed. I can fail as much as I want. I can make every mistake in the world. It doesn't matter. Even if I do share my art on Instagram in the links below. And oh yeah, no, there are definitely haters that are like, what the fuck is this? Like, what even is this? And it's like, I don't even know what it is, but I feel led to put it out there because I feel like everything coming through me, it's not me, it's coming from someone else. and it's exciting. I'm like, it's like a portal. Like, what are they saying? I don't fucking know. Like, and sometimes I feel like I do. I mean, it's like a Rorschach, really, where you look at it and it just opens up into any conceivable interpretation that just comes through your own particular vessel of being. So, I think the more inclusive you can be, the better. So also in my sacred play community, some people, like, they had like a hair ribbon, like they have a daughter, right? And so they use their daughter's hair ribbon as like a brush, you know, fingers, God, get finger painting, use your non-dominant hand. A great way to sort of activate a page. Like, oh my God, here's a great tip. Where I have so many. Oh shit. Sorry, Faisal Gil, mispronounce your name probably. Right now we're in a electoral season. There's an election in June, early June coming up, a local election here in Los Angeles area, and I mean, I can't tell how many of these bloody things. I wish the amount of money they're spending these fucking advertisements would actually go to the homeless problem and all the other issues we have in this damn city versus this shit. I can't tell you, these are so fucking expensive to make, and I have a stack like this of these damn things, and so I'm using them as a surface on which to paint, which I think is so exciting. So here's a fun tip, a way to activate this page. Get crayons, color pencils. I have these like paint markers, regular markers, doesn't have to be an acrylic paint pen or oil paint pen. You can get your actual paintbrush and some acrylic paint and start writing words just with your non-dominant hand, just like whatever, like screw you, like down with the man now. And your dominant hand, just put a couple words on, like, just even if you don't even know what words to put put your name, like you're, in school, putting your name on your assignment or something, put the date, because you're going to cover the heck out of this up. You're just going to put stuff on top of it, just something to get you going. And when you just start that, sometimes the momentum isn't quite there yet, but I feel like it will come. The more you do this, the more it comes. Everything is about just, right, the journey of 1,000 miles starts with one step. You just take the step, take another step, and listen. Really hear what the still small voice within, as Christians would say, the Holy Spirit, like, hear where it is guiding you. And so for me, my process is it's as intuitive as it possibly can be, an act of constant surrender, constant getting out of the way, and just listening what the voice says. And often, again, for me, it's very clear. It's like, purple, try that purple. Oh, no, try the lighter purple. Or if you don't know, okay, what the am I listening to? Like, am I insane? Like, am I listening to voices? Anastasia, you mentioned that you were, an inpatient and outpatient. Like, are you fucking schizophrenic? It's like, no. Another way of putting it is, like, what is calling to you? Like, what is your highest excitement in that moment? Like, if you're looking at, like, what I do is I have my big ass bin of paints and I'm just looking at it. What is calling to you? Like, a color, and don't make it make sense. Don't make it make sense. So look at, oh my God, that orange is just like don't ask why. And like, oh, well, orange and the complementary color or the opposite color, and like get your fucking color wheel out. Like, sure, if that is exciting to you, hey, go with it. I think what's more fun is just orange. Okay, I don't know why. And then suddenly spring green, and like part of me is like, oh, I don't like spring green, like Kelly green, ew. But it's like, okay, fine. And I'm just going to go with it. And then, okay, white. Okay. It's always good to have white normally, and black possibly as well. And then, dioxane purple, like a nice deep, rich purple, right? Like that, just, okay. Normally it's, like I said, a simple palette of just a few colors, normally no more than 4 or 5. Sometimes I feel glitter or metallic pop up, but yeah, so with that, those minimal, that minimal palette array of colors, and God knows if these are going to go with each other, not go with each other. I don't ask questions. Just listening. I'm just playing. I'm just having fun. This isn't a class assignment. I don't, well, of course, I don't, not just down. There are classes out there that work this way, because the woman who trained me, this is how she has been trained. So there are classes where this is what you're asked to do. In the normal college, probably not so much. But yeah, so with that, and then again, this is where you have to have a lot of patience. I do have a friend who works completely intuitively, who makes beautiful representational art, portraits, gorgeous. But they're definitely a tiny bit abstracted, and there's this soul presence, like you feel the eyes, the life of the person coming through. He even does work in a channel methodology, so he's channeling the person and so on, and listening. But for him, it could take 10 minutes before he gets an instruction to do what's next, and then another 10 minutes, and then another 10 minutes. For me, I am working really fast. I am not layering slowly colors, doing something very, again, representational or realistic. I'm often doing things that are completely a mess. Like, I don't know what, like, I'm practically with my eyes closed, like, doing stuff like this. And so I get the insights much more quickly. They just come, they bam, bam, bam. So that's just how I work. Now, recently I have been working in a more sculptural mixed media direction, and I'm noticing my candle is going to drip everywhere. All right, I'm blowing at that candle. We are still in sacred space though. It is, wow, that's wild. I don't know what's going on over there. So yeah, with the sculptural direction, it's more challenging. And things do come more slowly. So that took multiple months to finish this one piece. It's 27 by 40. It's fairly big, inches, not feet. Holy shit. And, it's like, okay, what do I do with this? And I listen. I'm like, oh, that sounds like a good idea. Or I get an idea when I'm taking a hike or in a dream, and it was slow but steady. But with the small, like one of these pieces, for example, like one of these little boogers, booger faces, one of these coasters, like this is, you can tell, a very limited palette. And if you can see, you see how this is like, it's like some strange vulture. You can see the eyeball, the long beak. Yeah, and obviously it's just, I think this was spring green, white. There's a little bit of that purple, incidentally. Obviously black is present. Very few colors are in this painting. And, I start listening. Normally what I hear is, after the colors are present, then I say, okay, what next? I'm at your demand. I'm at your, beck and call, your service. And then I hear, plastic knife, like choose that. Or again, it doesn't have to be like a voice. It's more it's just something just kind of, like you get that little feeling like, ooh, that sounds fun. Or like something so naughty. Like I am so not supposed to use something like that. And not like literally tissue paper, like Kleenex, right? Or toilet paper. And so I hear that and I answer that call, so to speak, and I pull that out, and then it's like, what color? And then I just start, and then I just go on it in terms of like what kind of, like they call it a mark, right? When you're making a mark onto a surface, that is just some of the first paintings I made. It's just, I didn't even know what was happening. I just was listening and just moving my hands. I don't know if there were other forces literally moving my hands for me, but I would do it so fast. I mean, I would basically get one of these surfaces. Like this one was a little more strategic. I actually painted the back black, but because I heard it, I did hear, they're like, oh yeah, like prime your surface, like paint it black, like gesso it kind of. So you seal it off so more paint can, like, I didn't sand it, or I didn't do anything like that. I would sand it, I guess, if I were asked to, but yeah, okay, put black. And then like for some of this, like I literally just got like I think this might have been a regular paintbrush, but it could have been a plastic knife. And then I get a nice glob of paint and I just go, I do just a little, like if you're putting, like mayonnaise on a sandwich or something, right? You get a little glob and you put it down and then you kind of smear it around a little bit. It was that kind of emotion. And yeah, so often when I'm painting these little tiny surfaces, I just get my knife and I go boop, and I've done a mark. And then sometimes I don't clean it off. Like you're supposed to have it super clean. there's still paint on it. I then get more of a glob of like a different color, red or purple or white, whatever. And then I go right back on top of the painting and then but I'm doing it because I'm also hearing how to do it. I'm just led, I listen. And there's a moment where I look at it and I don't know why, but it feels like it's done. It looks like a blob of nothingness often. And I just put it somewhere far away where it can dry. My cat won't eat it. Your animals won't eat it. And then I just let it dry overnight. And then I'd say like 99% of the time, I look at it the next day and there is something in there that just blows me away. I mean, I'm literally like I might as well have my eyes closed, and I sometimes do. I'm also painting it in a way that's technically upside down, sideways, because once it dries, I'm like turning it around until I realize, oh my God, look at that. Now, this is another thing. So this will be another segment of this, intentionality. When I started to paint these little coasters, and there's something about them that reminded me of the Muses. And so I realized I set aside 9 little coasters, and I researched, what are the names of the ancient Greek muses? What was each one known for? And when I would paint them, I just really would intuitively feel like, oh, this is Cleo, this is Urania, so I just started to really realize this is this one, this is this. So I had 7 coasters left, and I thought, oh, the 7 ancient wonders of the world. And I painted one, and it was just bizarre, and I didn't know what it was, and I just kind of meditated on it, and I'm like, oh, that is the hanging, gardens of Babylon. And I have done, this is the 6th one. I still have one more to do, but with basically in the back of my mind is I would love these coasters to be, each one of the 7 that I had left, the ancient wonders. So I painted this, and again, like I told you, this is like some vulture going on. I don't even know. And then it hit me, like I was thinking of a lighthouse, right? And when sailors, they don't want to crash into the land or the rocky scape of the coastline. But some of them do, right? Even with a lighthouse, or maybe the lighthouse went out. And I thought of that vulture. The vulture is almost like at a crossroads of death and life, and it's kind of terrifying and foreboding, but also it could be protective. And then this almost is like the coastline, or even like a building that's hanging off of, almost like a gargoyle. And I think I had already done the lighthouse. I might be conflating stories right now. Because there is isn't there a lighthouse? Wow, I should have really researched this before I started talking about this in this video. Because there's the Library of Alexandria, and then there is a lighthouse at something, or rather Rhodes. No, that's a Colossus of Rhodes. Wow, I am forgetting everything. Well, I can't remember. So this is either the lighthouse one or the Alexandria library one. And the reason, when I researched the building and what it looked like a lighthouse, whether it's the library at Alexandria or it was the lighthouse. That's one of the ancient wonder. This is going to be such a profound story, and and it's great. It's perfect. That's exactly how it's supposed to be for whatever reason. Yeah, so I realized of the 2 ancient wonders I had left to paint that this, and maybe you could say I'm making this into meaning something that it doesn't, but it's, I felt like, again, there's the intention. I do have these 2 more things to paint. I would love for something to reflect that. Guides help show me, just move through me. And then this vulture-like thing comes up. It's like, well, which ancient wonder is this? And I realized, oh, of the ones left, like I said, the building looks like a lighthouse. And then I was like, oh my God, like this, it totally looks like a creature, at the gates of the underworld, like, welcome, you're dead, or watch out, don't come here, so you're not ready yet. Anyway, this is sort of hopefully a little insight into my process. I will also share with you Urania. This is a print, so a lot of reflection. It's obviously framed. I have 2 sizes of this print. This was also painted on one of those coasters, and Urania is the ancient Greek muse of astronomy. This looks like an abstracted fish to me. When I painted this, I painted it, God knows, sideways, upside down. I let it dry, and then I saw this as kind of like very, bottom of the sea fish, like some of those fish that live at the very, like in no light and so on. But then I didn't even realize over time, I was like, oh my God, like that's its tail right there. And like a lot of these little swishy swishes, very much like very oceanic, and the other colors. Here's a fun thing about how you can make mistakes and let it take you in a new direction. When I first painted my first batch of 9 posters of the ancient muses, ancient Greek muses, they were these coasters. And I was like, well, I want to write on the back like what the painting is. I probably should paint it. I did a really silly thing. I did not protect what I painted on the front. And so I turned it over and I just painted the whole back black. And some of the black got onto the front. I technically, quote unquote, ruined my painting. But the fun part, this is one of my most popular paintings that I've actually sold, I think like 6 of or something at this point. Like the prints, I don't sell the originals, and I'm selling gilet prints of them. And it technically has all these like mistakes, but the mistakes add like a certain quality to them. That's the black that kind of got in the way. It's almost like a little, it's technically underwater, right? So embracing the mistakes and seeing how they actually aren't, and they add some character to. I think of in music, right, when you have live recordings, or even in studio recordings where they're recording someone saying 3, 2, 1, and or even at the end where someone starts laughing, or as I'm doing here, clapping or something, even in studio, and that becomes the radio cut, you know what I mean, and something people just go gaga for. So, wow, I didn't intend this whole video to be this long, but I hope it's been really, really informative. I will cut it up into segments, I think, as well for you guys. But this has been such an extraordinary journey of telling you a little bit about my backstory, my process, and most importantly, to kind of tie this all up. Whenever, like I said, I let these things dry overnight, keep them out of the way of my my cat, and then thank you, right? You want to end the time that you're spending in community, blowing out the candle, saying thank you, sending back anything that you've been in contact with to their respective dreamscapes. So saying, thank you, guides, angels, guardians, archangels, whatever, muses, thank you for your help. I thank you, I appreciate you, I love you, whatever you want to say. And may you return to your place of origin. You can say return to the great light. May you be transmuted through the violet flame of transmutation. There's so many things you could say to offer them renewal, respite, and safe travels back to wherever they need to go, to the great light, to their place of origin, or to just wherever they'd like to go, wherever they need to go next. We don't need to know how and why and where. Just thank them, let them go, close the circle, and be very clear. You are in your power. You can say what you want and don't want. So you do not want these people. You don't want the portal still open. You don't want people who coming in and out. This has happened to me. It can get pretty freaky and really intense and uncomfortable. If you want to experience that, I guess go for it. But I would highly not recommend that. Not playing around in that world, taking it very seriously. It is a very sacred process. It's not something to fuck around with. It will fuck with you, and this is not okay. This is something to be, again, deeply, deeply respectful of, deeply careful with, but also open and joyous and playful with. And again, you don't have to go in the direction of guides and angels and guardians and allies and blah, 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 blah. It can just be quieting, and like in Pinocchio, listening to your own Jiminy Cricket, right? Your own conscience, your own inner voice, your own soul self. That is just so. That's not too freaking esoteric, right? And that might feel a lot safer. So, but these are, again, take this or leave this. This is sort of my process. Very similar to dream tending, for those of you who've worked in those capacities, with like deep imagination work. But yeah, if you have any questions, I'm here for you. I mentioned a lot of ways I wish I could help folks one-on-one, different things I might link below, and also other conversations I'll have on here and storytelling that hopefully can help people in their own dark nights of the soul to know that there is a way out. And even if there isn't, because there are people in my life who are going through their dark nights of the soul who died, that there's hope still in that, and that there's healing for the family that they left behind and friends and so on, as well as their own release ultimately, that it's basically a beautiful life, even when it's excruciatingly painful, whether you leave this mortal coil or you stay here to do absolutely bizarre art that your neighbors even laugh at and other people mock, and that you just, I have so much freaking fun with this, honestly, because for once in my life, I get out of the way and I let something come through me, and I don't care how it looks. And honestly, the less I care, the more objectively good, or the better, I should say, objectively the paintings become. Like this, or Urania that is sold the most, I mean, I must have done this in like seconds, and it just was like 1,000% intuitive. I just went, blah, 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 blah. It was wild. And because I had there was no ego attached, and it's amazing to me. There are other paintings I've done that are just mind-blowing. Yeah, and there's some that aren't, maybe it's mind-blowing. But I feel like no matter what the painting is, there's a portal present. It's like a Rorschach, like I said. There's a way to journey through that into the other realms, into your own imagination, not to make it too, too, again, woo-woo. But that is about as thorough as I could be. I thought this would be a 10-15 minute video. Holy moly, it's almost an hour and 10 minutes long. But thank you. You are loved. I love you. I hope this has been so helpful and so instructive. And if it's not, hey, leave me some hate mail below. Yeah, yum, 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 I will munch on that, and so will the algorithm. So please, unlike, send me nasty comments, or like the hell out of it, send me great comments, or everything in between. I'm curious, actually, what you got out of this, whether it's the shorter video or the longer video, because, yeah, I'm not really attached to this, but I have had fun with it. I've even made some of these paintings into like shoes and t-shirts, and oh yeah, check out my Etsy. But it's fun. I think that we're here in life to play and to have fun. Abraham Hicks says that too. It's just fun, more fun, more fun. Follow our highest excitement. The money follows, the friends follow, the life follows. What a beautiful world if we could live from our highest joy, right? I say, dare to give it a try. And with that, I love you guys. Thank you. I'm now opening the circle. Open, never broken. I love you guys. Have a beautiful night, day, wherever you are in this gorgeous, amazing, extraordinary world. An opportunity to be this soul that's living, embodied in human form, and being able to listen and maybe do some weird art in the process, or great, or amazing, or whatever the hell kind of art you want. It's your life. Take it by the reins. Love you. Bye.